you everyone for joining us this evening for our live chat with NYU and Tufts University. We have both of the representatives here with us. And I just want to take 1 minute to introduce myself. I'm Kim Dixit, the CEO and co-founder of the Red Pen, a Mumbai-based education consultancy that helps students sort of navigate the higher education landscape, whether it's undergraduate, MBA, postgrad, and even boarding schools, actually. So we have been doing this in Mumbai for about 9 years. We have a global team. So while the majority of us are in Mumbai, we do have people who work with us all over the world, and we also help students all over the world. And my partner, Namita Mehta, the president of the Red Pen, is also here on with us. So welcome, and I will now just lay out a moment, lay out the ground rules for a moment, which is that you should have, as attendees should have access to the Q&A box. And the Q&A, you can post your question anytime. You can address it to either one of either Sayaka or Alex, or you can just address it to in general. And we will collect all the questions, and then we will kind of moderate them and give them back so that they're kind of organized rather than they have to read through a whole list of repetitive questions. So that's the way we're going to do it. So if you have questions, please do put them in the chat box, and we'll address them after the presentations. So now I'm going to hand it over to Alex. And Alex, 1 second. I'm not going to make use. I will stop sharing my screen, I think, because you don't have slides, but we can just at least look at you. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Well, good evening, and we're really excited to be here and to be able to speak to you about all the wonderful things about NYU. My name is Alexander Polk, and I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions in our New York-based admissions office for NYU. And so I'm very excited to speak with some of you, and a little bit sad that we're not doing this in person. India is one of my favorite places to travel. And as you know, admission counselors spend a lot of their time traveling and meeting with students, typically at their school and other areas. So we're a little bit sad about that, but this will be our next best thing. And just a general note that I'd like to start with is to inform you all that, of course, you're all at a very critical process throughout the admissions and college application process. And so I do want to say on behalf of NYU and pretty much every other university that I know of, certainly in the US, is that we are definitely still open. So we are available. We may not be in person. We may not be holding classes and working in our offices right now. But during normal business hours within our time zones, we are available to take your phone calls and emails. So please remember that as you go through this process, that we are still here, and we do encourage you to reach out if you. That being said, I do want to talk a little bit about NYU and about some of the things that make NYU unique, as well as how to apply to NYU and be a competitive applicant. And so, mindful of time, I'm going to jump right into that. So New York University, NYU, of course, we do have a very standard admissions process, meaning that we do accept students based on filling out their application and a few traditional methods that go along with the application, such as your transcript, standardized test scores for certain programs, letters of recommendation, your essay, some of your extracurricular activities. So it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing crazy about the admission process that you should be aware of ahead of time. It's going to be relatively in line with other universities that you're looking for. So at NYU, we only accept the Common Application. So there is no other way to apply. You have to apply through the Common App online. And that typically becomes available in August of your final year. So for those of you who are year 11, you're going to start looking at the application in August. That's when it will become available. That being said, most people aren't ready to apply quite that early. So if you are ready, that's wonderful, great for you, and you could always apply. But if you need a little bit more time, there certainly is time. We take deadlines very seriously at NYU. So students who are interested in applying for any university, but certainly NYU and other universities in the US, should be very mindful of deadlines. So please make sure that you're taking personal responsibility for knowing when things are due, because at NYU, we get about 85,000 applications per year. So unfortunately, we're not very flexible with those who might be trying to squeeze in past deadlines, because we've had so many other applicants who did apply on time. And that's true with both admissions and financial aid, so please be mindful of that. At NYU, we are an early decision school, which means that we do accept students who apply early, and we will accept them and give them information about their admissions decision early. And we also have regular decision. So for those of you who may not be familiar, in the US and in many parts of the world, there is both early action and early decision. Both mean that you can apply early for university, get an answer early. However, there's a very important difference. For early action, you are not obligated to attend the university. You are not contracted to attend. If you apply early decision, you are basically telling that university that if you are admitted, you will withdraw all of your other applications and you will attend that university. So you can only apply one place early decision. NYU does not do early action, we do early decision, which means if you apply early and you are admitted, you will be attending NYU. So that's something very important to remember. So if you're 100% sure that NYU is where you want to go, early decision is a great option. If you're not 100% sure, then you should apply regular decision where there is no commitment whatsoever. At NYU, our early decision deadlines are November 1st and January 1st. We have two separate early decision cohorts, and they're the same thing. It just means that one, you apply a little bit earlier, and for early decision two, it's not until January 1st for those of you who need more time with test scores, letters of recommendation, etc. We also have regular decision, which is also a January 1st deadline. So January 1st is kind of the big deadline for NYU. In terms of what we look for being competitive, academics drive our decision at NYU. So the most important thing in your application is going to be your coursework at school. So the courses you took, the grades you've earned will be the most important factor, no matter what you're applying for, whether it's a business program or an artistic program or humanities, academics matter the most. And that's also true with our standardized test score. So we have a variety of different options for standardized tests. Students can submit the SAT or ACT. They could also submit predicted year 12 marks for those of you who are in a traditional Indian national school curriculum. And there are a few other options. So please do your research and understand what we can accept, and understand that if your program requires a standardized test, then you have plenty of options. So that's something to keep in mind. It does not have to be the SAT, but it's not required. In terms of what we're looking for, we also are very focused on a good fit for the program. So at NYU, we are really interested in knowing that you've done your research about whatever program you're applying for. So we don't want to just see that you're applying just because you want to live in New York and you want to go to NYU and you don't care about anything else. We really want to see that you know why you're interested in that specific program. So a very important question, and this is a little bit of an insider tip, is that when you apply to NYU, on the common application, there is a question that says, why NYU? Please pay attention to that and make sure that you're answering that very thoughtfully. I think some students, unfortunately, in the past don't take that question very seriously, and they might just give a 1 or 2 sentence response and not really talk about why specifically NYU. But if you really want to be competitive and stand out from your peers, answering that question very thoroughly, and again, we're only talking 1 or 2 paragraphs, but be very intentful in your response and understand why NYU and why your specific program. So that's something else that we want to emphasize. And finally, in regards to the application, I do want to emphasize that we want you to use the common application as your main form of telling your story to us. And more specifically, I mean by that, we get 85,000 applications every year. We don't want to see anything in addition to what we're specifically asking you for. So for those of you who may have portfolios, websites, LinkedIn sites, things that make you stand out, we do think that's really important and that's wonderful. However, we're not going to use that to evaluate your application. So anything you want us to know, please put that in the common application or in your essay. Because if you send us an email with additional documents, unfortunately, they're not going to be reviewed. So please keep that in mind when you're applying to NYU, and we want to make sure that that's understood. Okay, so a few quick things to be mindful of time about NYU is that we have 3 degree granting campuses. So we have our major and largest campus in New York City, right in the heart of the city, but we also have degree granting campuses in Abu Dhabi and in Shanghai. So when you apply to NYU, you have the option to apply to 1, 2, or all 3 of our campuses. If you have no interest at all in studying in Abu Dhabi or Shanghai, then don't list those as options. However, if you are very interested in all 3, you will be able to rank them on the common application, first choice, second choice, third choice. And depending on the fit and depending on the strength of your application, we will admit you to one of our programs. We always start with the first choice, and we will only move on to your second choice if you are not a good fit for the first choice. So please know that as well. But if you only have interest in one campus, then just apply to one, and that's completely fine. In New York, when you apply to our New York campus, you do need to apply to a specific school within the university, whether that's engineering or nursing or business or arts and sciences. There's no way to just apply in general to NYU for the New York campus. So if you know exactly what you want to study, that's great. Then you'll apply directly for that program. If you're unsure, then there are a few options for being undecided, such as applying undecided to arts and sciences, or possibly applying to what we call our liberal studies program. So you have to apply to a specific school. However, for Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, you don't have to apply to a specific school within the university. You just apply to that campus, and then once you're admitted, you will choose your major and your course of study from there. In terms of our campus life and opportunities, as you know, we are in the heart of New York City, so there is just so much to do all around us. And it's not just having things to do during downtime and exploring the culture of New York and the US, but it's also really good for internships and networking. New York City is very large in pretty much every industry, so there is a lot of opportunity for students to be involved for internships, for making connections, and just for exploring your careers. There's a lot of opportunity for that. And on the campus itself, while we are in the middle of the city, we are a fully functioning residential campus. Most students live on campus. If you want to live on campus, it is guaranteed as long as you live on campus your first year. We have thriving residence life, we have clubs, we have hundreds of student activities and performances going on throughout the entire year. So it's very much a traditional campus feel. It's just that rather than being in a secluded area, we're right in the middle of New York City. In terms of our most popular majors, we see a lot of students interested in the performing arts, so dance, music, or theater. We see a lot of interest in journalism and media studies. We certainly see a lot of interest in business. And then also arts and science and psychology, we have a lot of interest there. But we have over 240 majors, so if you're interested, we probably have it. So that's a really quick overview of the vast opportunities we have at NYU. And so I will stop there, but I'm happy to take questions. And of course, as I said at the beginning, throughout this process, if you need anything, always feel free to reach out to me because that's what I'm here for.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex. That's really nice to hear that, because I think I always tell students the same thing. I'm like, they'll ask me a question. I'm like, why don't you just email Alex? He'll answer that for you. If I have the answer, I'll give it. But if I don't, email someone else. But the other thing I wanted to just say to the attendees is that at the end of this presentation, at the end of this session, we will have the email addresses posted again of Alex and Sayaka. So Sayaka, can you please take over now and give us a presentation on Tufts. Thank you.
Great. All right, I'm just gonna share my screen here so we can learn a little bit more about Tufts. I'm just gonna stop my video, but I'm still here. So good evening, everyone. My name is Sayaka Smith. I'm the admissions officer who works with applications from schools in India and some other parts of Asia. So I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an introduction to Tufts. It's not quite the same as I would usually get to do if you were on campus, but I hope that it gives you a little bit to kind of whet your appetite to learn a little bit more. So, little brief introduction to Tufts. We are located just outside of the beautiful city of Boston. We are just 8 kilometers outside of the city, so it's very easy to get into there, but we are in a suburban environment. So we actually are across 2 cities. The top half of our campus is in Medford and the bottom half is in Somerville. Where it's a community where I say it's cool to be smart in a relaxed, intellectually open environment. Our students are serious about their studies, but they're not serious about themselves. And with these kind of small average class sizes of about 23 students, we allow for the opportunity for students to not only have great discussions with their peers, but also their professors as well. There are 3 schools at Tufts, but there are also some other combined degree programs as well to choose from. So when you are looking to Tufts, you pick a program that you want to apply to. So you either apply to the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering, the School of the Museum of Fine Arts BFA program, the combined degree with the School of Museum of Fine Arts and the School of Arts and Sciences, or the combined degree with the New England Conservatory and the School of Arts and Sciences. One of the things I think is pretty rare about us is that you don't find many research universities that have both an engineering school and also a museum-affiliated art school. And just talking about the international student community at Tufts, I know it says 10% there, but actually our international community is much larger. It's a really inclusive community because we know that many students may be US citizens or permanent residents who have spent most of their life like around the world, who identify as part of the international community, even if they're not included in a stat or fact or figure. So to start off with the School of Arts and Sciences, this is the largest and oldest part of Tufts. It's a liberal arts college with a focus on research and exploration. We have anything from biology to the classics to international relations and dance. But I think the things that really set us apart are the interdisciplinary majors that we offer, such as cognitive and brain sciences and civic studies. Civic studies is one of the newer ones, and it's actually taught in conjunction with the Tisch College for Civic Life, which, unlike our undergraduate school, it's not a degree. So what we take is a lot of the practice from this College of Civic Life. So we have internships, volunteer programs, research into how young people vote, for example, and we use that to inform our civic studies major so students can learn about the theory that informs their practice. One of the other unique things is the experimental college. We have Beyond Socks teacher class about sabermetrics, but it also has classes, so when you as a junior or senior at Tufts are really interested in something and you find a friend who's equally interested in that, you can teach a class yourself to first and second year students. So that's a really cool thing that you can do by the time you graduate. You can say you taught a class. The next largest school at Tufts is the School of Engineering. So the School of Engineering at Tufts is smaller than many other engineering schools. We only have about 250 to 275 entering students each first year. And our last two entering classes have been notable because they've been around 50% female. So the current second year is a 49% female, and the year before that, the year most recent, the first years are 51% female. That's pretty amazing when you look at other engineering schools. And while we are a little bit smaller than other engineering schools, we still offer a wide variety of majors. We have 16 different majors across 6 different departments. And there are new and unusual majors that we have out there. We have one really great program in human factors engineering, which is a counterpart in the School of Arts and Sciences in engineering psychology. So if you're interested in product design, that's a fantastic non-ABET accredited major that allows you a lot of flexibility to look into design. And then we also have a new data science major, which is in its second year this year. I think engineers really at Tufts are a little bit different because they're not your typical just engineers all the time sort of people. They're people who are really eager to look at their other interests in the humanities, arts and social sciences. They're excited that's built into their degree program. So they can major in the School of Arts and Sciences as a second major because the walls are really low. The newest part of Tufts is the School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts. As I mentioned, it's a museum-affiliated program with the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which houses the second largest collection of art in North America. It is really notable because it is hands-on and you're not limited to one area of study. And this is not just for students who want to do a Bachelor of Fine Arts and Studio Art. It's not just for students who want to do a combined degree. The program, because we have these 3 schools with really low walls, it means that students can take classes if they're an engineer who want to look at, for example, how the arts can inform their practice as an engineer, or they're just a student who just likes to dabble in ceramics for fun. They can use the resources of the SMFA as well. Research is really a big thing at Tufts. We're a tier 1 research institution. So we have research going on from your first year all the way through to the postdoctoral level. Getting involved in research is as easy as literally just talking to your professor. My French niece was a psych major at Tufts, and she, on her first class, her psych professor put a list of the professors who were looking for research assistants. So that's how easy it is to get involved in research at Tufts. If you want to do your own research towards the kind of your junior and senior year, you have more and more funding opportunities to say, spend a whole summer on your favorite thing. So in terms of campus life, for the first 2 years, you're required to live on campus in our residential halls. I really enjoy this because we are a residential community. Your ideas can go from your class to the dining hall, all the way through to late night conversations that may range from Plato all the way through to pop music. in just a beat of a moment. Our first years, we don't allow them to pick their own roommates because we want you to meet people who you wouldn't have met before, but we do it through a system where we have a really cool survey informed by our psychology department that learned that people who have similar music tastes are more likely to get along together. But we also look at, for example, whether you're a night owl or you like to get up early in the morning. There are over 300 different clubs and organizations at Tufts. So we have Division 3 athletics, we have debate teams, we have a cappella groups, we have multiple of those, even including a Disney a cappella group, a competition Bhangra team, and a dance club for people who can't dance. One of the really unique things, though, I find that not many people know is that we are actually the smallest institution in the US to have a daily newspaper going out every single day. It's called the Tufts Daily, and we also have a magazine called the Tufts Observer and some other publications as well. So in terms of location, it's really easy to get to the airport or into Boston by public transit. I grew up in the UK, so I'm used to public transit. I really like the fact that in Boston, you don't need to drive or take cars all the time. It is a very green and beautiful city that you can walk around down to the Esplanade. And the city of Boston is a really great place for summer internships, volunteering, cultural activities. We have TD Garden for sports and concerts. We also have the Museum of Fine Arts and the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. We have some really wonderful spaces for students to enjoy. But you don't even need to go right into Boston. If you want a little bit more of a chilled out environment, we have an area called Davis Square, which is a favorite off-campus hangouts for Tufts students because it has a cinema, a theater, cafes, and restaurants. So in terms of admissions, I'm going to really kind of go very quickly through here. And so I really do welcome your questions if you want to get in a little bit further. We use the common application or the coalition application. We are pretty standard as well. We require transcripts and recommendations letters. So usually it would be one from your guidance counselor and one from another teacher in one of your kind of core classes. We are, as of this fall, for the next 3 years, we are SAT or ACT optional. So that means that if you're really stressed out right now, you're worried about getting access to testing, I know that's on a lot of many juniors and seniors' minds, really that's not something that we want you to be kind of overly stressing about. If you are able to get access to a test and you do really well on it and you're really proud of your scores, then great, we will count those and we'll look at those as part of your application. But if you don't have access to scores, we have always read holistically in terms of applications. So we will look at all of the other parts of your application and look at it that way. I think my Dean of Admissions often says this is similar to how we have optional alumni interviews. If you do an interview and you do really well, that's great. We will look at that and that'll be one part of your application along with everything else. If you don't do so well, then that's something that maybe we're not going to be so sure about. But if you don't have it, it's not going to hurt your application. We're not going to think, oh, well, why is there not an interview here? That's not how it works. If you have it, we'll use it. If you don't have it, we won't. There are some requirements for some programs at Tufts. So for engineering, we do require that students have taken calculus and physics. And for the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Bachelor of Fine Arts and combined degree programs, we also do require an art portfolio. But this is where I really will echo Alex, is that it's really important to look at the requirements for each college on their website and see what they require when you're applying to programs. And then also to make sure that you've dotted your I's, crossed your T's, it will make you feel much better. So Tufts process, we are a holistic committee-based admissions process. We read you in the context of your school and not by citizenship. It means that I'm not the only person who reads your application. We have committees that go through and consider your application in the context of your school, seeing what you have been offered and how you've done in that environment. I would say that we're looking for you to have a rigorous curriculum and doing really well in it. Your academics are obviously the reason why you're one of the big reasons why you're going to explore something in college. So we want to see that you're going to be able to do well in the program that you're thinking of studying in. But in addition to that, we're a community that we say are intellectually curious, playful, and kind. Intellectually curious, I'm going to see some of that in your transcript, but that's not everything. I also want to see that you're going to be a good community member on our campus and that you're going to hit the ground running at Tufts, that you're excited to be here. So I think that when I look at essays, I want to see that you've done research into what our community is and that you've thought about, well, how would I fit in there? What could I contribute there? And how might this help me grow as well? You don't need to necessarily know exactly what you want to major into a T, but I want to hear what you're excited to explore. So we ask you for up to 3 major academic interests in addition to that program that you choose for the school at Tufts. You do not have to stick to that for the whole time you're at Tufts. It just helps me get an idea of what you might do when you're on campus. If you are undecided, that is okay. Show me up to 3 things you're interested in, or 1 or 2. Just do not put undecided, 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 because usually it's because you have 10 different things you're thinking about. It doesn't mean that you have 0. It gives me a much better idea of what you're interested in. The other thing I'd say is have fun with your essays. They are not something that we want you need to be really formal and rigid. Tufts is not that kind of place. We want people who are willing to take intellectual risks, and are excited about the things that keep them up at night. You know, thinking about, they had students who had looked at the masks that we had that the university hospital had received, and that they had brittle kind of connections, and they wanted to work out, well, how can we repurpose these? There's a shortage right now. So they're willing to kind of think outside of the box. We want students who can do that. In terms of deadlines at Tufts, we have 2 early decision rounds. So again, these are binding options. This is not early action. Early decision 1 is November 1st. Early decision 2 is the same date as regular decision, January 1st, but you find out your decision earlier. With those early decision ones, you're basically saying to Tufts, if you admit me, I will come. So there's something that I think are not to be taken lightly. It's only if Tufts is genuinely your first choice that you should be using that option. Between early decision 1 and 2, the only difference is the deadline. You're making that strong commitment in either case, but I would say pick the one where you feel ready to be able to articulate why you're excited to be at Tufts. And if there's one piece of advice I'd give you, is I would say reach out to a student. In addition to being able to reach out to me and ask me questions about Tufts, we are often happy to connect you with a student who may be from India or shares your academic interests, which will really help you get to know our institutions. But thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to hearing some of your questions.
Oops, I think I'm, okay. Thanks so much to both of you. It's been really great to hear you talk about your institutions, which we, you know, both of you visit India, and we've seen you here before, and you've been, your colleges have been, you know, sort of well represented in person in the past, but it's great to have this opportunity to do this virtually. So I'm just going to go on to, I will share my screen, and I will ask some questions that we prepared and mix in some of the questions from the attendees, because there sure are a lot of them. Okay. All right. So I'm going to actually, yeah, I'll ask this question first. So this year, of course, you did mention, Sayaka, you mentioned the SAT and whether a student needs to include it or not. And I think Alex, NYU has been test flexible for a while. So, you know, we kind of have an understanding of how you guys use those scores. But I mean, to some extent, I guess the question is this year going to be different? Are you going to look at this at different aspects of the, are different aspects of the application going to have more weight? Let's say like the interviews or demonstrated interest or recommendation letters. Is there anything that you would advise students to kind of put a sort of a brighter focus on this year? Sayaka, why don't you start? Yeah, okay, Alex, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so we actually don't anticipate too many changes this upcoming year for the application for NYU. So obviously the world is in a very strange and unfamiliar place, and so we are being as flexible as we need to be. And so as things have been closed and changed, we are being flexible in terms of submitting unofficial documents and things of that nature for this year's class. As we're not sure what's going to happen just yet in the fall, we have currently not made any major changes to our policies. So those programs that required SAT or some standardized test before will still require them for this upcoming year. So we don't anticipate changing that. That being said, we are flexible with the test. So there are a multitude of options for students. So it doesn't mean that you are going to be in trouble if one form of testing might not be available. So, and we will work with students for that. So we don't anticipate looking at things very differently. We don't conduct interviews or track demonstrated interest at NYU, and we're not going to be doing that this upcoming year. So really your academics and your application components are still going to be as important as they were before.
Okay, super, that's very clear. Sayaka, any changes at Tufts, what you'll be looking at or how?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we're holistic. We have always been holistic. We will continue to be holistic. There is no change there. There is no change in the caliber of student that we're looking at or the type of student that we're looking for. It's just a case of now we're empowering students and their families to decide do you want to submit testing or do you not want to submit testing? And if you submit the SAT or the ACT, then we'll include that in everything else that we're looking at. But if you do not, then it means that we're going to be looking closely at every single other part of your application. There's nothing that we're going to be focusing on more heavily.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to reiterate, because you said it, but I think some people missed it because they're asking questions about it, that Tufts will be test optional for 3 years, correct?
So for the SAT and ACT, that's why I just want to stress, it's just the SAT and ACT. It's different. If students do require the TOEFL, it's slightly different. There's some families who that might apply to, but for the SAT and ACT, yes, it's a trial period. So it's starting this fall for students applying from this fall onwards for the next 3 years for us to see how this works for us.
Okay, great. And fine, I think that helps us. Let me go on to the next question. I think, both of you talked about, you both talked about opportunities and internships and, and I think, Sayaka, you used the word intellectually curious. And, I think I'm just trying to understand, from that, what kind of a student thrives on your campus and does well, and that you've seen in the past, particularly maybe students from India who've done well.
So I think it's a student who really does seize all those different kinds of opportunities and likes working with others. And I think about this year, like just in terms of like what our students are like, I just read the answers to our student government president running, like what happened, how people felt about after the results came out. And it turns out the 2 top candidates actually are best friends, are really good friends. And they said that they're really excited for this contest to be over so they can actually continue to work together in student government. And I think that says a lot about kind of Tufts students, is that yes, they were both running, but they were also equally excited about each other and what they could do for our community. So I think that says one thing about Tufts students, is that they are those ones who, they're not just wanting to stay in their comfort zone. I would say if you're somebody who just wants to do one thing, you just want to focus on that, I don't think you're going to thrive at Tufts. I think you're going to struggle, because you have to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone. And that while research and things like that are really easily accessible and available, it's on you to be somebody who is quite proactive, who's willing to chat with your professors, to go meet them at office hours. Those are the kind of students I know who thrive. I think about Rugang, who's a student from Mumbai, who just finished up his year abroad at the University of Oxford as part of the study abroad program we have there. He's somebody who really squeezed every single opportunity we have at Tufts. He did a program to do research at another college during the summer, a program at research with another professor as well, and kind of knitted those two together. So somebody who's like that kind of go-getter, willing to work with others, that sort of type.
That's great. Thank you. Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so kind of in the same vein, we're definitely looking at NYU when we're reading application essays and your extracurricular activities. We're looking for self-starters. We really feel that at NYU, of course, there are an enormous amount of opportunities both in the university and the city, but we really are looking for students who are going to be motivated and self-starters that may need some direction and certainly can use our services for advising, but have a pretty clear motivation that they want to be successful and that they want to be involved. So students who lack that drive are not going to thrive at NYU. And also folks who are open-minded, because since we are right in the middle of the city, you're going to see everything, the good, the bad, everything in between of New York City. And so we do that intentionally because we want students to be exposed to the real world and really understand what it's like to be a citizen of New York and not just at some area that's kind of secluded from everything else. But you have to be open-minded to thrive there, because New York City has a little bit of everything, and some of it you'll love and some of it you're not going to love so much. So that's really important to us.
Okay, I'm just going to go to this next question, which I think kind of picks up on that, which is, NYU, for example, like you even mentioned this in in what you were saying about, it's the hub of finance, there's the UN, there's lots of internships, and all this stuff is going on campus. But I think, at least from what I've seen, students that tend to kind of stick with that list of 5 and they don't really say much more about it. And so we're always encouraging them to, well, what is it about the UN and what is it about Wall Street and what is it actually, so how would you say that that applicants could find out about this and find out about how to kind of why NYU, right? You want to know why NYU, so how do they kind of learn more about it? What's the best way?
I think, in my opinion, the best way is to learn from other students' experiences. And that can go from, in a virtual platform. We have a lot of published information on our website about student success stories and what they did, and many of whom came really not just not knowing what opportunities lay ahead. They had that drive that I talked about, but they didn't know what was available to them.
Right.
And so we can learn their journeys about how they found that, how they discovered these things, whether if it was through a professor they knew well, an advisor or career center, an alumni, something like that. So that's helpful, but also just reaching out to us, the admission office, and asking if you can speak to a current student, because while the admissions folks can say everything we want to say about a university, to really get that experience from someone who has lived it, and kind of off the record conversation from everything from how did you get your internship to how's the food at NYU and things like that, that's hugely important. So I think talking and connecting with students and at least learning about them and reading about them is the way to do that.
Okay, and is your admissions office social media quite active? If students are following you on, say, any social media, Instagram, et cetera, is that a good way, or? Very
active, yes, absolutely. So we have several different platforms. The way that we usually tell students to start is Meet, M-E-E-T, Meet NYU, which is a handle on Instagram, which is run 100% by students. So that's a really good way to start. Okay, great. I wanted to get that specific information. And Sayaka, I think similarly with, with Tufts, what we face often is students are like, I really like, I think, I don't remember how you said it, but, they don't take Tufts students don't take
playful, we say.
Don't take themselves seriously, and it's like, and neither do I, and so I'll fit in at Tufts. It's like, it doesn't really work, but how can students really find out what that means and sort of give it their own perspective?
So there are a lot of existing things out there. I mean, obviously I would recommend following us on Instagram and joining our mailing list as well. But if you scroll down on our website, there's a blog section called Jumbo Talk, which I really recommend, because those are written by students. They talk about things like, what does my average Thursday look like? Or, what does my class day look like? How does, so you get an idea of what a schedule will look like, how you spend your time. Because while I say playful, it doesn't mean that all of the time they're playing and not doing any study. They're not, it's like intellectually playful. So you're having those conversations that go from one end to the other, from pop culture to looking at, for example, how gender comes into movies like Star Wars. Like there's a whole kind of focus in those essays about how students got to that point. So Jumbo Talk blogs on our website, I would really recommend. We also have our own admissions advice ones as well. And then if you're interested in a certain club or society, what I often say is that universities, they'll sometimes include links to those web pages. They're not always the most active because students tend to use e-lists and in social media to do that. So right. To have a link on the social media pages for those clubs as well can be really helpful.
Okay, great. That is helpful. Thank you. I have other questions, but there are so many questions from attendees that I want to kind of jump to that first. And some of them are very specific about subjects and courses. So one is about engineering and math SL. That's a simple one. Can you, Alex, tell us if a student has SL math in the IB and they want to study engineering, is that okay with you?
Yes, so it is okay. So students can take SL math. I apologize, there's a train going by at the same time, so you might hear that in the background. But we do accept students into both business and into engineering with SL. But I will say that students who have HL are seen as more competitive. Not a requirement. We definitely admit students every year in SL, but if you're just deciding and you have the opportunity to take SL and do well, then you should probably take, HL, then you should probably take HL.
Okay, thank you. And Sayaka, quickly, what about Tufts and math?
So with the new IB, so the new options, I would say that we would rather people do the analysis one. So we really, rather than applications, that would be probably set them up in stronger stead, but it's obviously that's a preference for us. I think that with that question, I would say I'd encourage students to reach out to us as they're making those choices. I'd be happy to talk with them about that.
Okay, fine, great. All right. So what about, we've had a few questions, we've had a question about interdisciplinary studies and double majors. Can you both speak about that? Sayaka, why don't you go ahead and say first whether you offer double majors? Okay, there's three things actually, let me break it up. One is it an advantage or a disadvantage to apply undecided? What if I want to double major, is that okay? And what sort of majors do you have that are interdisciplinary? So those are 3 separate questions.
All right, so let's tackle the first one. Is it a disadvantage to apply undecided? So when I was making my presentation, I said, do not put undecided, undecided, undecided for your academic interest when you're applying to Tufts. And the reason is that it gives me very little. I said that most students who are undecided, they're not that doesn't mean that they're not interested in anything. It means that they're usually deciding between several things. So while you can't list everything, I'm hoping for a student to give me an idea of what they're interested in. So that's what I would say is I encourage students just not to leave it completely undecided. Undecided might be your second and third, but just give me a little bit of an idea. What I will say is that every student, when they come to Tufts, they enter undeclared. They do not enter a particular major program, so that does not put you at a disadvantage. We want you to explore during your time at Tufts. So for engineers, there are plenty of people who have never had exposure to all of the different flavors of engineering. That's why you have introductory engineering courses that help guide you through that process. So that is fine. And then in the School of Arts and Sciences, you have a little bit longer. So engineers have 1 year to decide. Students in the arts and sciences have up until the second semester of their second year to decide. And the studio art majors in the BFA program never decide because it's an interdisciplinary program. So that's a little bit different.
Okay.
And then the second question was about double majoring. Is it possible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's possible. There are a small number of unicorns who triple major. I would think very carefully about that because it's kind of cool, but on the other hand, you're limiting sometimes some of the flexibility you have to do other electives. With double majoring, if you are dead set on double majoring, that's something that you would talk about with an advisor, and then you can work out the path that you would do. So maybe there's some IB, HL courses you've taken that might help give you some credit that might help with that. It might be planning out your courses very well. So if you really are dead set on doing something like double majoring or studying abroad, that's always something to talk about with your academic advisor when you first start at an institution.
Okay, great. And then I think the last question you sort of answered in the first answer, which was about interdisciplinary studies. And someone has specifically asked if, because this sounds interdisciplinary to me to some extent, does Tufts offer an urban studies major? Did you hear me?
Sorry, you cut out just a second.
Sorry,
Does
Tufts offer an urban studies major?
So that one, urban studies, we have as part of, it's not a main major of your studies, so it's a second major, if I believe. But with those ones, so with programs like urban studies, some of our programs are offered as co-majors, so it means, or minor programs, so that means that we want you to have something else to go alongside it. But that's definitely something that you can focus on in this area of study. And then also in terms of interdisciplinary majors, in addition to the BFA program, as I mentioned in my main presentation, there is the option to create an interdisciplinary studies major, but that's something where you have to find usually 3 areas of that will intersect with each other, and you have to kind of say why those come together in your interdisciplinary studies thesis.
Okay, great, thank you. So Alex, can you sort of touch on those points for NYU?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do not see it as a weakness if you apply undecided to NYU. As I mentioned, if you are applying to our New York campus, you do still have to apply to one of our 10 specific colleges within the university. So typically students who are undecided, you could apply within a certain school like engineering undecided if you're just not sure what focus you're interested in. However, if you are totally undecided, we recommend applying to our College of Arts and Science undecided or looking at some of our liberal arts programs that we have. That's a good place to start, but it's not a disadvantage. In terms of double majoring, so students do have the capability to double major, but there are restrictions. Students who double major have to have their second major be something within the humanities or arts and science in the College of Arts and Science. So if you are a business student, you could double major in something either within your school, so within business, or you could choose a liberal arts or science major as a double major, but you couldn't do business and engineering or nursing and theater as majors. That would not be possible. And finally, in terms of interdisciplinary majors, we do have a few different options, but the main one is we have a school called the Gallatin School at NYU, which is essentially a design your own major program where we really hand the baton over to students and they're able to essentially design their own curriculum and come up with some concentration that could be a blend of different things that aren't available as conventional majors. And we see literally anything come out of that. So we see things that are more directed and make the psychology of art, things like that, or it could be something that seems to be, we've seen concentrations about the politics of comic books and how that's been influential. So it could really be anything, but yes, Gallatin is a good place to start for those who truly want an interdisciplinary experience.
And from Gallatin, I just want to understand, can a student, like you mentioned, psychology and art, those are both in different schools. So you can sort of combine from majors in different schools. It's not like it has to be, that subject has to be taught in Gallatin, correct?
Correct, yeah. So essentially, if students are interested in 2 different majors, then double majoring is probably the best way to go. But if you really want to blend different topics together, Gallatin's a good way to go. Students who are in Gallatin have classes that are offered within the school, the Gallatin school itself, but they also have pretty much unlimited access to the 10 other or the 9 other colleges within the university. So you could take courses all across the board.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. And one question for NYU specifically, do you, a student is interested in the athletic recruiting process, particularly track and field with NYU. So what is your recommendation for that student? What should they do first?
Yeah, so as a Division III NCAA athletic institution, you would have to go through the NCAA, and once you are actually really at any level, you could reach out to the coaches directly. So that really, would have nothing to do with admissions. We would not be able to assist a student with that, but the first step would be to check out our athletics website and email the coaches.
So directly through the coaches. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to ask you both a few, what do we call them? Rapid fire questions, because I have a lot. One second. Okay. So I'm getting a lot of questions about specific course, how do I say this? Specific course subject selections, which I'll come to that after this. Let me just do this first. So Alex, I'll let you go first. What is the sort of preferred IB score for NYU students?
Definitely. So our most competitive students typically have in the high 30s, so typically between 38 and 40. So those would be that is out of the traditional scale. So that would be competitive. I know that students tend to want to know what minimum scores are, and similar to most universities in the US, we don't have a minimum floor. So students certainly can be admitted below that, but the most competitive students we typically see between a 38 to 38 and up.
Okay, can you tell me what is the most popular major or on applications that you see at NYU? Is there an answer to that?
Mm-hmm. So there isn't really one single one. I would say kind of a tie between, maybe a 3-way tie. Certainly our business programs are very popular. We do see a lot of students applying to arts and science, specifically psychology, and then also our performing arts, our majors tend to be very popular.
Right. A student is asking, do you check student social media accounts?
No, absolutely not.
No. Do you require TOEFL for Indian students?
No, so students who, the TOEFL only applies to students whose native language is not English. So if a student is a non-native English speaker or has not attended an institution that has instruction in English, then they do need TOEFL. That rarely applies to students in India.
Okay, great. And then the last one is, I think you already said this, you do not track demonstrated interest.
No, we do not.
Okay. Sayaka, I'm going to ask you exactly the same questions. What's the IB score?
Okay.
What IB score are you looking for?
So I think it's very similar. There's not one that we're looking for, I'd say. I would say it's very similar, that the most competitive applicants are the ones who tend to be scoring the higher end of the scale, like the scores, right? So there are students who tend to be in the high 30s and above, but that's not, as I said, there's no cutoff, and the same, I would say, Alex would say the same. But the most competitive students tend to be scoring that. But it also depends on what your combinations are, what you're taking, your individual circumstances. So I would say do the best that you can. We're looking for students who tend to be doing very well in a rigorous curriculum.
Great. And the most popular major, applied to major at Tufts?
So there's no most popular applied to major. I can give you like a top 5 kind of majors at Tufts if it helps.
Sure.
IR, economics, psychology, biology, and computer science. And that's in no particular order.
Okay, great. Do you check social media accounts?
No.
Okay. Do you require the TOEFL for Indian students?
If a student's primary language is not English, or they've been studying a school where English is not the main language of instruction and so if they're in a school where English is the main language of instruction for 3 years or more, then we do not require the TOEFL or any of the other English language tests.
Okay, and do you track demonstrated interest?
Yes, we do, but I would say it's sensibly. And as in every single year, we are mindful of the fact that you are not living down the street from Tufts, you're applying from the other side of the world. So we use that mindfully. I think the best way to show demonstrated interest is through your application.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to go on and ask you these specific questions about subjects. And I think most of the students are asking about the IB, but I'm going to kind of keep it a little broader because I think, and you can tell me if it matters, if it's sort of, let's say, an HSC or a CBSE student versus an IB student, or maybe somebody in it. There are lots of people on this webinar, so people could be from other parts of the world too. I don't know. But what I wanted to say is, can you hear me? Okay. It said my internet connection is
I can hear you now, just for a little second.
Yeah. So 2 questions. One is if I want to study English or journalism, is it necessary for me to take a lab science in the IB? And the second one is, do I need to take IB economics to apply to undergraduate economics? And finally, the other one was something about for business programs, do you have any specific IB requirements? So anything you want to say around those questions? Sayaka?
Just generally talking about, like, when students are thinking about what they want to major in, of course, like, if you can get exposure to what you're thinking about studying, that is great. But we also know that your mind changes over the course of high school. You just can be mindful of the fact that you may need to kind of catch up a little bit at college if your kind of mind changes about the majors you want to be doing. In terms of the student who's maybe thinking about English and non-science kind of major, but they're saying, should I be taking a science in high school? Yes. The reason I'm going to say that is that many colleges have graduation requirements. They're requiring you to take some science courses. So I would say trying to keep your kind of choices broad helps you to kind of meet those requirements. It's letting you kind of setting you up for success later if you change your mind, or just in terms of those general education requirements. I would encourage it, but we do not require it.
Got it. Thank you. And Alex, anything around those sort of subject-specific requirements?
Pretty much the exact same answer. It is nice if you can get exposure to those topics, but they're definitely not requirements. If you're looking at business or engineering, we do want to see that you have sufficient preparation in math, but there's no absolute requirements. And regarding taking a breadth of different courses, regardless if you're looking at something more humanities or science focused, we want to see as broad of a course selection as possible. So science is going to be important.
Okay, great. Thank you for saying that. I say that a lot. So.
Yeah, the engineering for Tufts is the only one where we're like calculus and physics are an absolute must have. That's the one thing. And we don't have business as a major, so.
Right, okay. I asked the typical IB score, so now someone's asking typical A-level entry scores, Sayaka.
Again, really similar.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking for students who are having the high, I mean, again, if sometimes people ask me about the US curriculum, I often say it tends to be the students who in their curriculum are getting the higher grades. So those are the ones who tend to be the most successful, as you can imagine.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Alex, there's a question about, and I guess this is just because anyway, I'll let you answer it, but maybe you already have. If you're undecided, should you apply to CAS or Gallatin?
Yep. So you could apply to either. So the students who are applying to Gallatin as undecided, certainly students who apply to Gallatin don't need to know exactly what their topic might be. Sometimes students apply to that program because they just know that they want to create their own curriculum, that they're that much more of a self-starter. They don't want to be told what classes they have to take. So if that fits you, but you're not sure what you want to study, you could absolutely apply to Gallatin. That being said, if you are looking to apply undecided, that's really the main distinction. If you are very interested in creating your own curriculum and you're undecided, then Gallatin's for you. But if you're not sure you want to do that, or you are eventually hoping to find a more conventional major, but you're undecided for now, then College of Arts and Sciences for you.
Okay, fine. And someone else has a specific question about NYU, which I think I know the answer, but I'm going to let you say it. Can I apply to NYU New York and NYU Abu Dhabi both in ED1?
So you can apply to both in ED1, but you have to rank in the order in which you're interested. So if you're looking at Abu Dhabi, that's number one. You could apply ED1. New York will be your second choice. One quick note about that. If you are admitted to NYU for ED, either ED1 or 2, if you are admitted to your first choice program, then it is binding. You are obligated to attend. You're telling us you will attend. Yeah. However, if you are offered to your second choice program through early decision, then it is not binding.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. So I'm just, Namita, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that there's so many questions coming through about, you know, if I want to study math at NYU, then do I need this? Do I need that? What are the requirements? So can I just get both of you to just say something about how, you know, I do know that it's not like there aren't any requirements. It's not like you cannot apply if you don't have particular subjects, but, you know, that certain subjects are obviously preferred. Because I think even after you guys are answering it, it just keeps coming up. The idea that you must have a subject, otherwise you're not going to be eligible. Do I need math if I want a minor in economic? If I want to study psychology, do I need bio? I'm just going to let you guys quickly answer that because that's just constantly coming up.
So this is a common question, and it's one thing that I need to bring their minds into, I guess, more of a US-centric university mindset, in that it's not common in the US for students to need to have very specific courses or very specific concentration in high school to get into a specific program. There are definitely schools that have specific requirements that you may need physics or engineering, or you may need chemistry to go to nursing. But in general, we're just looking for students who are of course, in some and child courses. So that's very open-ended, and I know that sometimes can make people uncomfortable because they really want to know the ins and outs of exactly what we're looking for, but there really are no answers to those questions in general. Typically, we're just looking for students to take a variety of courses and to take the highest level classes that they can within the context of what's offered. It's very, very rare that in the US that we're going to say, oh, you didn't take this one specific course, you're not going to get in, or you won't get into this major. The majors in general at NYU at least have pretty similar requirements. They're not specific to certain majors, with the exception, similar to Tufts' engineering, that you really do need to have physics and calculus. Everything else, though, is pretty much fair game. If you're taking a variety of classes and you're doing well, you will be to all of our programs.
Thank you so much, Alex. I hope that answers like a lot of these 51 questions that are coming our way.
I would like to, I think I'd like to end on this question because we are out of time, but there's a question, a very specific question about how you're going to, and I think we kind of touched on this, but basically, you know, how will you, if predicted grades are not on the transcript, is that okay with you? And if it comes later, and people are just worried that, you know, right now, because kids are not in class and schools may not be giving grades, you know, how will you kind of process all that? And is it okay with you if the predicted grade is not on the transcript? Now, in that context, what I would like you to both end with is just advice for our applicants and how to kind of think about, you know, the place we're in, the place we're headed, and how to you know, think about worries like that and what advice you have. So Alex, go ahead, and then Sayaka, I'll let you end it.
Absolutely, thank you. So we are not going to hold students to any standards during this once in a lifetime, hopefully, experience that we're all going through that is out of their control. So by that, I mean, if your school is not going to list predicted scores, we're absolutely not going to hold that against you because there's nothing you can do about it. So that's something that I think everyone should kind of take a deep breath and kind of ease their concerns with things, that if it is out of your control, if your school is not fully functioning, if you're activities that you're usually involved with aren't taking place right now, it's not going to negatively affect your application because we will know that. And if you want us to know these things specifically, then you could definitely write about that in the application and say, I'm usually really involved with student government, but since school was closed, they're not doing student government this year. That's why I didn't have it my final year. If you write about that, then you're 100% fine. So same with grades or any kind of standardized tests. If they're not offered in your area, or if they're not going to be offered in the same format that we're used to, we will be flexible with that. So there are going to be certain things that we will definitely always require, but the way your transcript is presented is completely out of your control. So please take that advice to heart and just know that all we expect you to do right now is your best. So we don't want to see that your grades are taking a tremendous plummet, even if you're learning online. We want to see that you're putting that effort forward and that you're still doing well, but within the context of what's going on in the world. So please believe me when I say that we really do mean that students come first.
Thank you. And Sayaka, some advice from you?
Yeah, I really want to echo the same. Continue to be engaged in this process, right? I think that we are excited to welcome you to college, right? We want you to come and find an institution where you're going to thrive. So continue to do the best in your schoolwork, connect with your friends. You know, I know it's not exactly the same, but like keeping your sanity through kind of doing Zoom calls with your friend. I know that some students have been reaching out to me with all of the different things they've been doing, especially from India. I've been really impressed by all of the things that everyone has been finding ways to grow, to connect, to learn during this process. And reach out to us, be social during this process, and really coming back to the thing that we said before, reach out to students, because when we're doing this from so far away, we can't visit, it can sometimes feel really distant. So reaching out to a student and talking to them about their experiences will help it feel a little bit more human.
Yes, and I think we have several students from both of your colleges back in Bombay right now who we can connect to very easily. In fact, I think, yeah, one is one of my neighbors from Tufts. Anyway. So great. Thank you so much. It's just been really nice to have you both here, and thank you everyone for joining. It's been a wonderful group and really amazing questions. I wish that we could get to all of them. I was just telling Namita, we haven't even touched, I mean, we didn't get questions about it, but even in the presentation, we didn't even touch financial aid, all those sort of the usual things. But I think there are lots more questions out there, and please note down these email addresses and contact Sayaka and Alex directly. Thank you so much, and have a great evening to everyone. And we will see you on the next webinar. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe.